Today on Redneck Light, I'm working on my 1978 Continental Mark V by adding some instrument gauges. To keep the Malaise era luxury aesthetic intact, I'm mounting them in the glove box so they stay out of sight. It's not completely straightforward. There's some drilling, wiring, and fitting sensors involved, but it's all part of the journey. Stick around as I walk through the process and share how it goes. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Redneck Light. I'm going to be working on the Mark V again today. So what we're going to be focusing on is the gauge cluster in the interior. I've got my plan to mount my gauges all in the glove box. So that way when I need to see it, I can easily get to it. And when I don't need to see it, I can close it so it doesn't ruin the aesthetic of the vehicle. So let's get started. All right, to bring you up to speed, I've turned the battery switch on so that way I can see the lights and everything that are going on in here. I always like to say, if you listen to nothing else that I say in this video, get a battery cutoff switch or disconnect your battery when you park your Continental Mark V, because the seat switches like to corrode and catch fire. I don't want to ruin the aesthetic of the beautiful interior here, so we're going to mount our gauges in here. It's going to take away storage in the glove box, but I've got a center console with plenty more storage, so not a big deal. When it's closed, we don't have to see it. When I do need to see it, leave it open. I've got this triple gauge cluster. It was a no-name from Amazon. And I've got a nice Bosch tack over here. I figure I can get everything mounted first before I tackle the wiring, because the wiring is going to be the hardest part. So while the glove box is open, that little light comes on, and then when it's closed, it turns off. And it is not tied to the key, so whenever you turn the car off, that light stays on. I think what I want to do, I'm going to disconnect that light, and I'm going to take that wire and use it for the backlights of my gauges. So basically, when I open the door, the backlights will all come on for the gauges, and then when I close it, they all turn off. The gauges themselves, I'm going to wire to a keyed source. So it looks like the good news here. So we've got the this thing that holds the door up. And then underneath, we've got 3 screws that we need to undo. You know, a lot of these plastics, and it depends on the car, depends on how it was stored, depends on how old it is. But if you drive a screw too tight on any of this interior where the plastic's brittle, the plastic will shatter. I'm going to unscrew everything with my power drill, but when I screw it back in, use your hand tools. Don't tighten it like a gorilla. This car is in pretty good condition, so the plastics are a little bit more forgiving. However, you can't just assume that with something that's 50 years old. Another useful thing to have is a magnetic screw tray. This was easy. It was just a Phillips screw, but these up here, it's a very small socket size. So let me go find a socket. All right, these are 5/16 hex screws. Okay, now this just comes right out. As far as being able to drive in the self-tapper screws to hold those in, as long as I get real short ones, I shouldn't break through the front here. So let's get this over to the workbench and start getting our mounts done. You know, usually I'm pretty haphazard with what I'm doing, but since I'm working with an interior piece of the vehicle, I just put some of this down to protect it from, you know, moving around. More 5/16. Yeah, I think I mentioned it in the last video, but this is the difference between name brand and no name. You get a lot of wiring with the Bosch and a super long tack wire. Thinking right about here and then right about here. And it actually lines up just about right if I put this 3-gauge bracket right up here at the front. For this one, I'm going to use my shortest self-tappers. Looking at the side of the glove box here, the shortest self-tapper won't get anywhere close to the edge here. Now this is going to be kind of the same idea. I'm going to do one self-tapper here. And I think I'm just going to drive 2 self-tapper screws. There's actually 4 holes, but I should be able to get away with just 2. All right, here's what we got here. One interesting thing I found is there's this little, it looks like maybe something was meant to slip in here, maybe like an insurance card or something. I'm not really sure. If you have any idea what this was originally for, let me know.
But what I'm going to use it for is a place to route my wiring. I've got everything just finger tight here, and start doing wiring is I'm going to just do a test fit. So I've got another video on this. Get yourself a remote battery cutoff. Makes it very convenient. You just hit the remote button, everything turns on. Don't try to use power tools on this or else you will destroy the plastic. The only good thing about this is the actual screws themselves are screwing into a metal clip. So this is why you do test fits. When I close this, the tack hits the light that's inside there. And it's just a kind of barely hits it. That's what we'll do. We're going to take all these, put them over here, take the tack and put it on the other side. You almost wish to have a car that doesn't have a very nice interior, because having to do interior work correctly and in a way where it looks nice, it is a lot of effort. Here's the light. That'll actually be real convenient because I can just use this plug to hook up all the lighting. So I switched them around. I've got the tack over on this side and I've got the mount for the 3 gauges over here. And now it easily clears that light over there. Now we just need to tackle the wiring, which is going to be the hardest part. All right, you join me in another night in the shop. I start thinking about it, and I think what I need to do first is put in my sensors. What I really want to do is find out where I want to put these sensors. Then I'm going to start running my wiring. I've got some automotive wire, and this is 14 gauge wire. The thing about automotive wiring is you don't want it to go too small, but if you go too large, it's no big deal. I've got little eye terminals. I've got all my hardware here in my magnetic dish in such a way where they won't fall out. So let's head over to the car and see what we want to do. Under the hood here we got our 460. At some point, some genius, I believe it was the mechanic that the owner previous to me used to do a once-over, put this way too long flexi hose in the way. Mortsky would be mortified. But basically in such a way where it got in the way. This intake should actually be sitting flat on top right here, but it can't because all this is in the way. Perhaps one day I will correct this. For now, we're not worried about that. What we are worried about is finding some places for our sensors. First of all, you get a car from the late 70s during the emissions era, vacuum lines everywhere. And the Lincoln's even worse because so much of the car is powered by vacuum. So we're going to get the air cleaner out of the way just so we can see a little bit more. This air filter I think was new, but it was the cheapest new filter it looks like they could find. Now, I've removed a lot of the extras. Like many things, I should just remove it, but there's a whole bunch of vacuum lines that used to be over here. It's a mess. But here's the horrible Motorcraft 4350 4-barrel carburetor. Let's see, what's wrong with this? The accelerator pump, when I rebuilt the carburetor, and when I put the new accelerator pump in, the gasket tore, so I kind of sort of have an accelerator pump, but not really. I mean, it works okay once it warms up, but I'd really like to get rid of all this and replace it with an Edelbrock intake. I've got a 4-barrel carburetor ready to go, a standard square bore. The problem with this guy is it's got it's a spread bore, but it's not compatible with Quadrajet spread bore. It's a different measurements. So it's easy to find spread bore adapters for Quadrajets. It's impossible to find. Well, it's possible to find an adapter for or 4350 square bore, but they're very expensive because I think they only made these particular spread bore 4350s for a couple years. But yeah, I've just got a lot of this stuff capped off. Half of it I don't know what it does. I believe this is a vacuum switch powered off of the water temperature sensor that's right here. On the distributor, the vacuum advance is controlled by that switch. So I wonder if that even works. I've never tried to time it or anything, so like I said, it runs fine, but I have a feeling it could run better. We've got a few other goofy things here. Here's a little solenoid that bumps the idle up for the air conditioner. Cruise control. The cruise control does work. It's vacuum powered, like everything. This was the exhaust valve that was part of the emission system, part of the smog pump. There's more of the EGR back here I've got capped off. It's cold outside right now. The choke's kind of half open. I have a feeling that it just stays half open. I bet it never opens fully up anyway. This thing is plugged into something over here, and I got it capped off. So I don't know what it is or what it's for. So this port here that controls these vacuum switches is after the thermostat. So this will warm up and show me kind of the true engine temperature. What I might do is remove this, and like the vacuum advance, I'm just going to plumb into normal vacuum instead of this switched vacuum. I can't imagine that would be a big deal. If it is, but if I take this out, I can just run this temperature switch right here. I probably need an adapter because I doubt that thread matches this thread just from eyeballing it. There is a port right here on the top of the thermostat housing, but this is going to be before the thermostat a little bit, so it's going to show a lower temperature than what the engine actually is because it's already gone through the radiator by the time it gets here. Now this is going to be a little tricky. So I know at the 460, way back here, this is the oil pressure sender. Now this obviously goes to the dummy light on the dash. I don't want to completely replace this because, you know, it's always good to have something redundant in case my gauge goes out or doesn't work right. So what I need to do is I need to get a T here. Basically something that will screw in here that has two ports, one for the dummy light and one for the actual sensor. Now, it looks like there is going to be enough room back here when I put a T in. Hopefully this EGR doesn't get in the way because if I take this off, it's a big vacuum leak. Right now I've got it all capped and everything. Now all that's fine and dandy. I will research what the threads are currently and then what those threads are and then find adapters and T's and everything. Okay, things have escalated a little bit, but kind of expected. But I pulled some of the carpet back. This side carpet was just stapled with really tiny staples on the side here. I'll have to put that back up. But basically, I found that the grommet and the wire that was on the other side of the firewall is the radio antenna. So I don't think I'm going to route through that grommet, but I think I can drill a hole right next to it. That way I can see it come out over here, and then I can route my wires through there. As for my carpet, it was full of dirt daubers, as is common with cars from Texas. This big long cable was kind of just tucked in there. It's a Ford cable, and then I figured out that this is the CB radio wire that goes to the CB radio box in the trunk. That no longer works. All right, we're making progress here. So, what I got over here, I've got the tack wire that I need to run through. I've got the blue wire, which I'm going to designate for the coolant temperature, because blue is water. And I'm going to use the yellow wire for the oil pressure, because yellow is a color that's different from red or black or any other color. I could get confused as to which wire is which. Okay, while I've ordered the stuff I need to get the wiring done, figured I'd go into the sensors now. So right now we're in my truck. I'm reusing some of the knowledge that I gained. I've got a few adapters here. The T is a 1/8 T because most aftermarket sensors and things use a 1/8 fitting, but the Ford Big Block factory fitting is a 1/4 inch. So I had to order some adapters to get all of that to fit correctly. I'll put all the adapters and things I used in the video description. You know, one fun fact, I bought the truck as my first classic car. It had a 460 in it. The Lincoln came a year or so later, also had a 460. Let me tell you, having two cars with the same motor and the same year, they're both 78s, has been extremely valuable because I can take some parts and compare between the two, and it's really helpful for a self-taught kind of home mechanic. All right, same idea with the temperature sender for the coolant. That's a 1/8 NPT fitting, and I'm pretty sure the factory is a 3/4 or something. I don't know. I'll put it on the screen what the factory fitting there is. And basically, I'm going to replace this vacuum switch here. All right, we've got most of what we need in the mail today. And this is what we've got set up for the oil sensor. The adapter for this has not arrived yet. So we're basically going to drill in right next to this hole because I know where that grommet is under there. And this is a convenient spot to get our wiring into the engine bay. I neglected to think about, I don't know, I can't get my drill down in there. I need to move the inner fender out of the way, which on most cars, might not be a big deal, but I've got so much stuff attached to the inner fender, I really don't want to disturb it. Well, let me ponder on it. Okay, we've got some real goofiness coming on. Some real redneckery. So I've got my hex driver connected to a flex, connected to a right angle, connected to a step bit, and hopefully I'll be able to get enough force on the step bit. Now, the last time I used this to try to drill something, it did not go well. Yeah, this is not going to work. Oh my god, it's working. I think it worked. Okay, well, I got through to the fuzz. Let's see if it got through to the other side. All right, I don't know if you can see this very well, but I have poked through. I really can't believe that actually worked. So big score for the DeWalt right angle flexi thing. Okay, grommet installed. Now it's time to put in our fish line and pull our wires through. So just to reiterate, green for our tack, blue for water temperature, and yellow because it's a different color for oil pressure. Basically what I don't want to happen is to have the wires be too short. So I'm going to get them run under the hood. Once everything's running in place under the hood, then I can come down here, run them into the glove box, and then get everything just the correct length. This is going to be the hard part, so I'm going to do tack first. So the tack cord, as long as it is too short to get to the coil. So what I need to do is route the tack cable. I need to splice in a wire. Then I'm going to follow the factory wire harness up that way, down the valve cover, and then up to the tack. I just crimp them together. I'll take the two cords and put them into one, so that way I don't have to mess with the factory connector here. Is that the best way to do it? Probably not, but it's the way that I do it. All right, we got it spliced back there, and we got it spliced up here. I've got the tack signal going to both of them. I'm curious, the Lincoln doesn't have a tack gauge, so I wonder where the tack line goes to. Maybe the air conditioner or some sensor or something. Who knows? All I know is I've got everything but together. It's a heat shrink butt splice, so I'm going to take a lighter to melt that down. I don't like how close it is to the carburetor, so I'm going to try to move away from it, but I'll film it just in case something crazy happens. Open flame next to carburetor. What could go wrong? There we go. You can also do this with a heat gun, but a lighter is much easier. All right, and there we go. I'll cut the ends off the zip tie. It's at the end. Got this bright green cable and all the way over and into the cab. All right, these two are much easier. Zip tied to that AC line. I've got the water temperature sensor, and I just left the end undone, waiting for me to be able to put the sensor on there. And then tonight what we're going to do is we are going to get the oil pressure sensor out of the back there, install our T. All right, we're all set here. If you're curious, it's a 1-inch socket. You'll need a deep socket to get around the sensor itself without damaging it. And then just a good extension, and mine loosened right up, so hopefully I can just get this right out. This was a lot harder in my truck because there's actually way more room in this gigantic engine bay to get to the back of the engine. On the truck, this is almost underneath the cowl. And there's the oil pressure dummy light. Not a whole lot to it. All right, we've got quite the bit of geometry to achieve here. Down here, we've got the adapter that's going to go into the engine block, going to the T, to an adapter, to the dummy light, and then also from the side go into the sensor. And since the sensor is so huge, I'm going to come get it to the side. Now these NPT threads are tapered, so basically they get closer together the more you screw them in. You need to put some thread sealant or oil specific Teflon tape just to make sure that they seal well. I went ahead and did Teflon tape because I looked at my truck where I'd done this before and it used Teflon tape and it never leaked. So I'm going to go, it's a lot easier than trying to deal with the liquid stuff. Basically, I've got this on my bench vise and then it's a wrench here. And what I'm doing here, since basically you have to tighten these until they won't tighten anymore, so I don't strip it, just use a shorter wrench and then you just turn it till you can't turn it anymore. Well, it took some doing. Got everything set up, so it's kind of hard to see here. There's a lot of junk in the way here. And yet another reason I need to replace this intake. There's this thing coming out of the back that goes to this vacuum line that comes up here and does who knows what for whatever reason. And I discovered a vacuum leak. So hopefully if I cap that, that will that'll make the car run better. A couple millimeters at a time with a wrench, you know, shoved into the space back here. So it's not fun, but honestly, this is better than it was in my truck, where not only I had to fit all these wrenches in very small as I had to do it way higher and way less accessible from the side and in the back. All right, last thing for tonight, I have put on an eye terminal. This one's actually just a tad too big for the terminal on the oil pressure sensor, but there's a little nut on the back of that. I'll thread this on, screw the nut down, and then we should be all set for the oil pressure sender. All right, back at it for another night. So we got pretty much everything done with the wiring under the hood for the oil pressure sensor, and I now have the adapter I need for the water temperature sensor. Do the threads here, attach the adapter first, and then we'll go in with a socket. So we got it in. I'm going to set up our wiring. So got the end of this stripped. We're going to put it into the eye bolt and crimp it down. On top of the sensor, there's a nut, a lock washer, and a flat washer. Pretty sure you want to put the eye terminal underneath all these. Scooch that on there. Flat washer, lock washer, nut. First try, it's at 8. And I'm just going to finger tighten this with the socket. No need to. All right, temperature sensor is now installed. So part of this, I replaced the pressure switch that used to go in that socket. And, you know, it's hard to say with this carburetor, but that appears to be manifold vacuum just because of its position on the carburetor. I think for now, I'm just going to replace it as is. 70s emissions, lots of vacuum garbage. To avoid cracking the old brittle plastic, I'm basically going to slice the line so that I can peel it off of the old plastic bits and then cap it up. All right, here's the nonsense I've come up with. This goes into the carburetor, and then the path travels through here, through this thing, and into the vacuum advance. This will work for now. This is the redneck way to do it, and I spent $0 to get this like this. And we have our redneckery. Good. Okay, so hopefully we are done under the hood now. I already found my first mistake. I did not run this cord through the glove box, so I'm going to have to cut it and resplice it. No big deal. I wanted to avoid another splice, but here's my plan for all the wiring under here. So each of these gauges has a positive and a negative terminal. The backlights have a positive and a ground as well. The voltage one doesn't have a sensor terminal, but the oil and temperature do have sensor terminals. Those are going to be that blue and yellow wire that I ran under. And then the tach's kind of got the same thing, a positive and a negative lead. And then this white cable, I'm pretty sure, is the positive lead for the backlight. It shares the ground here. So what I need to do, all the black wires from the gauges themselves, as well as their backlights and the ground lead from here, we're going to splice all of those together and then run a ground somewhere under here. And what I'll probably do, since I've got this big long pigtail from the tack, I'm going to cut it short and then reuse the extra length to run the ground under here. The positive leads, I'm just taking the positive leads from the gauges themselves in the tack, and we're going to splice them all together, and then we're going to run to the fuse box over there to a keyed power source. And the last bit, we're going to run the positive leads from the backlights of all 3 gauges and the tack, and splice them together and run them to that switch. Automotive wiring is one of those things. I actually don't hate automotive wiring. It can be challenging. It can be a little problem solving, trial and error. I'm probably not someone you want to try to learn automotive wiring from. I use butt slices and just kind of cobble things together as best I can. So I'm going to do all that off camera and then kind of show you what I have after I'm done. All right, so just to show you the progress I've made, I've got my 2 sensor wires here with I terminals. Haven't done the splice yet on the green wire. I've cut the ends of these. Just made it a little short pigtail because I'm going to do all the wiring back here inside the glove box. And then I've got all the pigtails set up for these, the I terminals screwed into the back of each. Now to do some splicing. The hardest one is going to be the ground. This may be a bad idea, but I'm going to try to get all of the ground wires into one splice and then have one wire run to the ground. We'll see what happens. I've got a big old butt connector I think I can use. I'm not entirely proud of this. So I've got a crimp and I managed to shove all the ground wires into the biggest crimp I have. I'm pretty sure that they're all making contact, and I got it shrunk down and everything's tightly fit. We're just going to hope that that works, but if I have problems with any of the gauges, this is probably the first splice I'll look at. Second splice, that's going to go to the keyed power source. This time I hooked it to this pigtail. I'm going to stretch out some wire that I'm going to be using to route over to the fuse box that's over there. In hindsight, I cut off this extra wire, and same for the black. I should have just used this for the pigtails on the other gauges. I don't know. They're smaller gauge, and it would have been easier to shove them all together than these big old 14 gauge wires. But hey, it works. And I learned a valuable lesson, and that's really what it's all about, right? All right, and there is the backlight wire. White lead that I cut off. I got everything spliced in here with the 3 backlights here, and they'll just go into that plug over there. First thing, we've got our ground. I disconnected this little light here. This metal here is the ground for the light because the cord over here only has 1 wire. I'm assuming that's the positive wire, meaning that it has to be grounded through here. So that's where we're going to connect the ground for all of these gauges. Next, I hate these little guillotine clips, these to tap into existing wires. I've had a lot of them fail, but this allows me to keep the factory light connection intact. I don't think I'm going to reconnect it, but if I want to, I always can. So I tapped this wire so that now I have the backlights. All right, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm at the point where I have the negative connected and I have the backlights connected. So in theory, if I reconnect the battery with my wireless battery connector, if you're interested, check out my video on it, the backlights should come on. Let's see if they do. And they don't.
2 hours later.
Okay, automotive wiring, man. It'll always trick you. So, this plug is not the plug that carries power from this switch. This one is. And I can test that by just taking the wire. The backlights all light. The tach's a little bit dimmer than these over here, but now I know that all that works, and I did go ahead and use my multimeter to test the grounds and everything else. Everything else is good. So I did splice everything correctly. I just had the wrong plug in the dash. So continuing on. Now we've got our stupid guillotine in the correct place. Let's see if we get backlights. Oh, for goodness sakes.
Eventually.
Okay, have I said I really hate these guillotine plugs? There we go. And when we push the button, they shut off. Perfect. So down here in the fuse panel, which is underneath the oh shit. Learned something new. This is the parking brake release. Usually this releases with the when you put it in gear, but good to know. Glad I have it in park right now. So I'm pretty sure this fuse goes to the instrument panel, which means it is part of the keyed ignition. I'm going to do some tests with my multimeter. Also, there's a wire here that's tapping this. I have no idea what it goes to. I think I've seen this before, and To this day, I don't know where this red wire goes to. So yeah, mystery wire, and it does not look factory. I guess it could be factory, but I doubt they would set it up like this. To make a long story short, my wiring, everything works. I did testing with a multimeter just to double check everything, and everything's looking good, except the voltmeter. The voltmeter does not work. So if I turn key on, you'll see that I've had the engine running, so it does read the temperature. Oil pressure also reads, tach reads, but the voltmeter does not read accurately. See, this is the thing. This is what happens when you get no-name gauges from Amazon that were only 30 bucks. I've got another gauge that I was going to put on my truck. It's got a black face, but the voltage meter works just fine on it. We've got everything set up. Still got to do some cleanup, obviously. As I'm driving, everything looks normal. Oh, but I want to check something or see my gauge readings. We just open up, and there's our gauges. This is about the angle I see it at. The tach's a little less than visible, being all the way on the end and a little bit high. I could stand to maybe use a different mount, but for my purposes, it should be fine. The other gauges are all looking good. I had to replace the volt gauge. I kind of like the black background, honestly, because the one that came with this kit didn't work. And the temperature and oil pressure, they seem to work all right. Once I kick on the key, you'll see that the voltmeter comes online. So if I had to make any suggestion, if you have the extra money, spend a little bit more on name brand gauges so they don't fail. Otherwise, this is a great thing. You know, there's lots of wires shoved in back behind the glove box, but you cannot see them from the angle you're at when the doors open. And when you close it, see, I show you. Once you get past the point where it pushes the button, the back lights turn off. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm really pleased with how everything turned out. Got my gauges now so I can monitor the vitals of the Lincoln. I haven't ruined the aesthetic of my Malaise era interior. So for me, this took me about a week working nights. I wasn't out here every night, probably 4 or 5 hours. So in an ideal world, this would have been a weekend project. In a world where you're busy, you've got work, you've got family, you've got other obligations, it may take you a week or so. But the idea is do it a little bit at a time. A lot of people don't start projects because they think they don't have enough time. I have before too. But the thing is, if you start it and then you just whittle away at it, even if it takes you weeks, months, if you keep whittling away at it, you'll get things done. I've got till June to get this car ready. In an ideal world, I could probably get this car ready within 2 or 3 weeks. In the world I'm in now, I might need all the way till June. Not to mention, I don't have all the money in the world. I've got a little bit to get essential stuff that I absolutely need online, like when I do the brakes. I may not be able to release a car video next week, but I will try to have one the week after that. I think the next thing I want to do is some maintenance. I got some Motor Pure, as recommended by Pole Barn Garage, Inevitable Jim. People have said that it clears out lots of sludge and things. So my only worry is a lot of times there's a bunch of sludge that keeps your engine from leaking. So it may turn out that I change the oil and suddenly everything leaks. That's the aspirational plan, at least. It may turn out if I'm real busy, I may do something smaller like wash the car. The way to keep your car hobby alive when you have lots of other responsibilities is just to do what you can, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Make sure you never let your car just sit and get boxes stacked on top of it. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. If you think I did something wrong, I'm self-taught on a lot of this. I do the best I can. I try to follow best practices, but a lot of times I just need to do what I can to make things work. Subscribe so you can follow me and in my revival of my Continental Mark V. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.